Okay, my son, we got 4 people here, hope y'all can hear. Okay, tonight is just the work session, we take no motions, no votes, no nothing, it's strictly, I think the best thing that we can do is, discuss things. This is where we really discuss it, ask questions, and find out what we need to know, and be prepared when we come back Tuesday night to vote, hopefully. Anyway, so, now do you want to do a roll call?
Yes. Connie Reed? Yes. Carl Kincaid's absent. Stephanie Merle, is she coming?
She's got open house.
Okay. And Brian Hill? Scott Glover?
Here. Under vote.
Under vote, yes.
Discuss minutes of the July 2nd meeting. Any discussion on those minutes? Yeah, sure. I got cough drops, I got it tonight. I got everything tonight, no cough drops, everything. Usually Stephanie has this one.
Brian's gonna do it.
Okay, if we are, okay, with no questions on the minutes, we'll go on. Discuss the June 2024 financial statement. You all have that in the packet.
Okay, this is the June financial statement, and what I'm just going to do, I'm just going down here at the very bottom line on, like with, general fund, the revenue, the, budget estimate was $2,716,853, and we actually brought in $3,026,638.79. So our revenues was up. It's the second page. Yeah. All right, right down under that is the expenditures. We budgeted $2,618,865. We went over on our expenditures by $2,880,000. We did not buy that, but our expenditures was $2,880,261.81, which is a difference of $142,101.98. And of course, we amended the budget, so we're okay now. I mean, these numbers are what we actually budgeted from the beginning. Then on the next page, of course, is the gasoline. Take the 3-day funds. We estimated 132,200. Year to date realized is 175,974.28. So we was up on our revenues there in the 3-day fund. And
Is that 145 instead of 175?
Yes.
Yeah, what did I say? Yeah, 145, I'm sorry. Right.
Just making sure I forgot the right number.
Yeah, well, I dyslexic here. Then the street aid fund, we budgeted an expenditure of $75,000 for street lighting. We've actually spent $55,713.63. In our debt service, we budgeted $69,367. We're good on street aid fund. We're good on everything right now. And then we also Stephanie asked that we include. She just wanted a all-inclusive approved budget for the meeting, so we've got that. And then I'm skipping around. At the back of that financial statement is also the June local government investment pool figures.
On miscellaneous revenue. On revenue, where we over exceeded what we budgeted. That was because of miscellaneous, wasn't it? Is that where Richard Bill gave you the
Yes.
check that we were,
Uh-huh.
and so that made us look good,
Mm-hmm.
and that went right out in expenses.
Right, it
Yeah,
did.
so it just
Yeah.
was a wash.
Yeah.
And then also, grants,
Mm-hmm.
we got 80,000, so we went over on there. Sports bet, that really helped us.
Everybody keeps on
Keep on
staying
betting.
on board.
Yep. City court fines and costs, we went over there, $10,000, that's good. Where we didn't make it was our local option sales tax. We budgeted $927,000. We only took in $825,502, so it's a good thing we had the overage on these other things. And to offset that, franchise tax, I see, was 10,000 short. Building and related permits, that's good. We were 16, almost 17,000 over on that. Of course, that's a wash. Comes in, goes out in expenses. State sales tax, we did real well in that. We really about, I'd say almost $50,000 over that, that's good. Under and beer tax, over in alcohol beverage tax, though, very good, way to go. Rural Fire Service did real well, almost 17,000, almost 5,000 over. So that's, but I would say the check that Richard Bell gave us is what keeps this revenue, made this revenue look high.
Right, but it also went out too.
That it goes out,
Yeah.
yeah, it goes out in expenses, yeah,
Right.
yeah. Okay,
So you're over $305,515.79.
We talked about it in revenue,
So revenue,
it's right here, between this and this.
right?
It is 111.25%.
Subtract this one from that one, you get 305,515.
Yeah, yes, that's right, yeah, you're right.
So where's the bid money in this?
The bill money is up here in miscellaneous, up here.
All right. So, do we need to subtract that from the 305?
No, because we actually got it in. But if you want to, but you got, but it's showing it going, it's going out too.
Oh, it shows it going out.
Uh-huh, yeah.
Where is that?
It'd be under general government.
Okay,
Mhm.
so, general
There.
government.
Uh-huh.
okay, and then we've got the, any more questions or discussion on that? Okay. Then you got the budget.
Yeah, I gave everybody the final
Yeah.
budget.
So does this, all this budget estimate, does that include, voting on to?
Amend it, no,
increase it?
not to amend it, no. That's just what we started out with.
Okay,
So,
so,
so what was the overage that we got in spending, we amended it, so we're fine.
so what was the amended number as far as revenue?
In terms of revenues or expenditures, because we only amended the appropriation.
Okay.
The amendment that y'all took up was on the expenditure side.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So does this include that, the 216?
No, it doesn't. This is just, because we didn't amend it until after June,
All right,
and this is June.
so do we know what that number is?
It should be, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it should be pretty close to what we're over.
Okay. year-to-date on our local government investment pool,
Mm-hmm.
the interest that we've earned is,
Okay, that's on, that $8,208.91, that was for this month, what we
Right.
got this month, in June only, yeah.
so when would we have a year-to-date?
I can get you a year-to-date, but all you gotta do is, we put in 1.8 million, so we have probably, let's see, we have gotten probably $73,829.18. Well, 1,882,309. Around 83,000. That's an interest on it.
So basically, if we had not had that $87,000 in interest, then our budget deficit would have been more. Right. Or, like, is that calculated in, so,
That's not no, our budget deficit wouldn't be more.
I got you, that,
No.
so that didn't figure in?
No.
So we put in exactly 1.8 for interest in it.
Yes, yes. All you gotta do is just take 1.8 and then add 82,000. That's what we've gotten into.
And that's year to date, so far, just
That's
1 year?
through June.
Okay.
Yeah, that's year to date, and we didn't, August or September is when we put the money in there.
Yeah, that's not 12 months.
That's not 12 months.
9
uh-huh.
months.
Okay.
And once again, will we be using some of that money for Jeff, for the grant, for the, some of this money that we put in that we're drawing interest on? We'll be taking some of that out, won't we?
Yes,
For the grant,
all
yeah,
over in this budget year.
yeah. So,
We're keeping it in there as long as we can.
Sure,
Cover
yeah.
the costs, it's good interest.
it's good, and I'm glad that we did that. But it is earmarked, it's not like revenue, it's earmarked. But I'm glad, that was a wise decision to do that.
Yeah, 1.8, 1,083,000 something earmarked.
Are we ready to move on to the next topic, or do we have more discussion?
I'm done.
And like I said, you have your budget, you have a copy of your 24-25 budget. Next on the agenda is to discuss the first reading ordinance to adopt and levy a property tax rate.
Sure, Mayor, I know Melody was talking to the CMFO at CTAS, at INTAS, and we researched it because we did not have the certified tax rate at the second reading of the budget. Normally, it's just part of your budget, but you're required to pass a separate ordinance if you don't have it at the time of your budget. So this is what this does, sort of just an extension of the budget, but it's required to be an ordinance. So there'll be 2 readings. They'll be advertised, public hearing at the second reading, but it's what was in the budget. But we have to take that step, and then we have to send this to the state equalization board.
Okay. Any questions? The moving on down, discuss issuance of a capital outlay note for police vehicles. Melody?
Okay, we're doing this through the Tennessee Municipal Bond Fund of $360,000. Financed over 6 years, we're gonna get a 5% interest rate. That was sent First Federal. It was the cheapest. We don't yet know exactly what our payment's gonna be. Probably, I budgeted 62.1, I believe it was, but I think it's gonna be lower than that. I think it's gonna be around 54,000 a year
For 6 vehicles?
for 6 vehicles.
For how many years do you say?
6.
Okay.
We don't wanna, we could own more, but we didn't, the interest would have been more, and also we don't wanna budget, borrow more than the life of a vehicle.
So how do we go about shopping for,
We get, of course, normally anything over 25,000 has to be put out for bid unless unless we buy from somebody that falls under the state contract. So Chris has researched and he has found a dealership that's under the state contract, so we don't have to put it out for bid. And I don't know, Chris, you probably have told me who it is, but I can't remember what you said.
Lonnie Coppold.
Lonnie
so are they financing it?
Financing is,
Tennessee Municipal Bond Fund is doing all the legwork for us. And that's what they do. They get bids from all the, about 5 banks, and First Federal is the cheapest bid on the interest.
That's what I want to know, how do you bid
The
the
interest, yeah. Well, they do that, yeah,
loan?
yeah.
So it's not done in-house, it's something that,
No, Tennessee Municipal Bond Fund does it for us.
and where is Lonnie's place?
they're on the other side of Jackson.
I was driving through Arkansas yesterday, and I saw a dealership, probably 100 police vehicles sitting out there, I guess waiting to be sold.
They just got them in, but yes, sir, we run off a state contract. There's only a couple of places, a couple of dealerships in Tennessee, in Middle Tennessee that is authorized to sell them.
Do we have to buy from a Tennessee dealer?
We could probably go outside, but we wouldn't get state contract price.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
When will we be ready to order them or sign, when will we be ready to close the contract?
We're waiting on the resolution, and it's got to be sent to the comptroller's office, and then they approve us going in debt.
Okay. Moving on down to, does anybody else have anything for us? Anything? Discuss first reading ordinance to revise zoning ordinance Article 4, supplementary provisions applying to specific districts, Section 4.010, off-street parking requirements. We'll turn that over to Amanda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So, just as the caption indicated, right now in our zoning ordinance, there are different types of off-parking requirements for different types of uses, and most of those are dependent on square footage. Some of them are dependent on the different type of use classifications, such as restaurant, fixed seating, capacity, so on and so forth. What this particular amendment proposes to do is to just focus on the residential parking uses. Traditionally, it's your usual, like, two spaces per residential unit. What we've been finding is that 2 is generally not enough. The average vehicle ownership in this particular census tract is 2.8 vehicles per household. That's average. Usually it's a little bit more. I can give you all sorts of weird stats that have been floating around in my brain from working on grants on transportation-related stuff, on how car dependent we are in this area. But long story short, we have been finding that it's just simply not enough. Especially when we get larger developments coming in, there's no requirement in our zoning ordinance for overflow or guest parking, so on and so forth. And so that's been a constant friction point in trying to get enough parking accommodations on site. So what this proposes to do is to take away just the blanket two spaces per and replace it instead with a bedroom-centric prescription. So for one bedroom, you would have one required resident parking with a required half spot overflow. So if you've got a one-bedroom apartment or a studio, then you would basically, the developer would be required to put in 1.5 places, 1.5 spots. 2 bedrooms, 2 spots with one required overflow. 3 bedroom, 3 spots with 1.5 spot overflow. 4 or more bedrooms, 4 required parking spots with 2 for required overflow. What's important about the overflow parking is that can be anywhere on the site. It doesn't necessarily have to be right there at the particular building. The resident parking does need to be near the dwelling unit itself. There are other regulations in our zoning ordinance that require the distance of the spots, especially for our ADA accessible spots, to be within X number of feet of the dwelling. But this gives the developer, if you will, or the builder, the ability to be able to take those overflow spots and be able to have flexibility on where to put them. So if you have a more highly amenitized development, something that might have a pool or something that you know will have a pretty high usage, then a developer might choose to concentrate a lot of those overflow spots near that amenity. Or if it's something that maybe isn't as highly amenitized, they may choose to have it kind of sprinkled more. But anyway, it gives more flexibility, but it does give a requirement to provide for that overflow parking. I had heard from our police chief that, and various residents that, when there's no room, people end up parking on the street. It becomes an issue. So hopefully this is a way to try to mitigate some of that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Garage count for a spot?
It does.
It does.
Yes.
I went to helping my granddaughter look for her own apartment. And I just have to throw this in, that 3 or 4 years ago, she would have to have gone to Bellevue or gone to Dixon. Now she has got 3 choices right here in White Bluff. Starting with out at, I still call it, it's out by Pig and Pub, the dollar store. Yeah. Then she's got down here at Bell Forge. And what was the other? Oh, out in, she's got a spot over in Carriageway over there. So, I mean, I thought that's good. And then she found out that some of her friends are also already renting at some of these places. 3 or 4 years ago, and this is what we were asked for in one of the community meetings. 3 or 4 years ago, our kids would have to have gone to another town to rent, and they didn't want to. So, but the point being, I know the one at the Jazz Center is what I'm trying to think of. Okay, I still got Jazz. He has got his overflow parking up at the very end, and one it seems like down here at this end. I mean, and then Danny has got his overflow parking. All the parking spots are like they're supposed to be, and then he's got a whole strip kind of set aside. I don't remember how they were handling it over on Carriageway, on Sedal Top. But anyway, so I never would have noticed that before until this.
Right.
Yeah.
does that put us even with everybody else, or is that put us slightly above everybody else as far as?
So, moving to a bedroom-centric is not necessarily new. Parking is always one of the really, really touchy subjects. There's lots of different schools of thought. There's no one right way to approach it. I think it's more current. I think a lot of communities are moving away from just the generic two because it just doesn't work anymore. It's outdated. But nobody has quite found that, yes, that's the answer. So this is, I think, a step in the right direction, just to try to help relieve some of those burdens.
So the current trend.
It is a current stable trend. I would classify it as stable. Yes.
I have a concern once brought up by one of our council people 2-3 years ago. I do remember that. About the parking. I remember that.
The main thing is right now we don't have anything that compels, that makes somebody provide for guest parking. So anything that we've got right now has either been the result of a lot of negotiation of you really need to do this, or a developer being given direction going you will not have an approval unless you do this, or just by the goodwill of the developer saying yes, this makes obvious common sense. Unfortunately, we can't rely on everybody's common sense all the time. Sometimes it has to be written out.
So this is for all forms.
Yes.
You have to remember, these are minimum standards, and as Amanda's saying, some developers are just gonna try to meet those minimum standards and move on. And if it leaves us with an issue, then you need to mandate more. And this mandates guest parking, whereas right now we don't have
We
that.
have nothing.
This is residential though, more designated toward PUD, toward planned unit development. It's not,
I mean, really, when you
not a house, right? I mean.
Well, when you look at trends, I mean, talking about national trends, the trend really is to most homeowners don't use their garage for parking.
Yes.
They use it for storage, which forces everything out into a driveway. So if you've got 2.8, round up 3 vehicles per dwelling, which is your average, at most, if you're lucky, 2 can fit in a driveway. Where's that other one go? It has to go out on the street. So it's kind of been that adjustment to any kind of home. I mean, if you look at my parents, for example, I mean, they're in a retirement community, you know, but if you look at even my own home, I mean, our shop is full of not cars. You know, I have my little footprint that I get to put my little cruise in, and that's it. So I really don't think it would be fair to say that it's slanted toward any one type of development, truly.
Yeah, this is a zoning standard, so, I mean,
Yeah.
look, if you have a 3-acre lot that you're putting a house on with a driveway, that's a lot of parking spaces. That's not really what this is geared towards. You're gonna check this box real easy. This is really more in the townhome type world where, oh, you have a garage and 1 parking space in the driveway. People don't use the garage. Where do they go after the driveway? The street. So it's trying to alleviate that problem. But it applies to everything. It's per bedroom, residential parking spot, and then required overflow. So when a development came in, you would look at the number of bedrooms, and there's a number that spits out under this table.
How does visitor parking fit into this?
Visitor is the overflow.
Yes, guests, whatever.
Yes.
Any more discussion? Any questions, discussion? Item number 6, discuss first reading ordinance to revise zoning ordinance, Article 2 definitions, Article 3, by adding section 3.140, open space standards, and Article 5, residential density, and repealing any ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith. Amanda?
Actually,
Yeah, I did put the final version together. All right.
team standards.
Yeah. So this is something we've been working on for a while. It's made its way through Planning Commission with favorable recommendations. There's really, the definitions just clean up and create the definition for these two things. So the two big changes, and I'll go through each separately, are open space standards and density. So we'll start with open space. You have already passed a new PUD ordinance overhaul that, I guess, last year, that came to you in March, you passed it. That has a 25% open space standard. There really wasn't any open space standards for any other development outside of mobile homes, which was interesting. This creates a standard in the town for a 30% open space standards. This is in line with your woodland protection. It'll actually help developers keep areas undeveloped to adhere to the woodland protection. But kind of getting down into it, it is a 30% open space standard. A fourth of it has to be formal, 3/4 of it's informal, and that's defined in this ordinance, but think of formal as a courtyard, a gazebo, all the way up to a pool, and informal being, it can just be woods, you know. So it has examples and definitions for both of those types. This only starts to apply once you get to a certain size. So you come in with a lot to build a home, you've already got a lot of open space happening probably on that lot. It just doesn't apply. So this is when you start to see larger platted developments. So 10 acres or 15 dwellings is going to be the trigger to kick it off. For non-residential, so there is a commercial component, 2 or more buildings, 5 or more non-residential tenants, or a gross building area exceeding 50,000 square feet for a site or lot exceeding 5 acres. So when you turn over to the 3.140.3, the actual standards, you'll see the table there. So you've got the PUD, 25%. But then that residential development, 30%, that's going to apply to your R1, your R2, your R3, that reaches that size, 10 acres or 15 dwelling units or more. So you can see in here how it's calculated, definitions of what formal open space is, neighborhood amenities, gathering areas, formal gardens, squares, greens, plazas, parks. That's the formal. Again, just take 100 acres, unlikely to see a development that size, but it's easy for math. If you have a 100-acre development come in, that means 30% of it has to be open space. That's 30 acres. A fourth of that would have to be formal. So you'd have to put in a park or some, gathering square or something. It also has to be located within the community. You can't just put everything on the backside. It can't be, the formal open space can't be more than a quarter mile from any home. But it defines each one of those and what open space is, and then what does not count as open space, like the yard of the lot doesn't count as open space. It has to be outside of the lots you are creating. So put a pin in that for a second, because that's one that's a big shift, no doubt. I mean, you've already done it in the PUD, and the last thing I'll say on this for the moment is this is also designed to encourage people to seek PUDs. The standards are a little bit less. It's 25% versus 30. The formal open space is a little bit less. It's 20% of the open space versus 25%. This kind of goes hand in hand with the second part of this ordinance, the residential density standards. In order to kind of make them balance and work in what we've seen, I'm encouraging this body to look at density through a different lens. right now, your zoning ordinance looks at lot size, square footage of the lot, period. Under what you're seeing here, and I'm sure this will generate debate, but what you're seeing here is it looks at units per acre. So if a 100-acre development comes in, at the zoning phase, you know the maximum amount of units that can go on that. It's a lot easier on the front end to see what it can be. And so it tries to create those standards, and that's the big change. So we have our 3 residential zoning designations, R1, R2, and R3. R1, and this is a placeholder meant to generate debate, but R1 would be 1 dwelling unit per acre, which is about in line with what it is now, depending on, but if you're on sewer, you can actually fit about 2 units per acre, and I'll talk about that more in a second. Under R2, it's 3 dwelling units per acre. That's a little bit more density than you actually have in your R2 right now. R2 is not that different from R1 under your current zoning standards. You're going from 22,000 square feet to 17. They're pretty similar, especially when you look at other jurisdictions with change from different residential zoning districts. And then R3 is 5 units per acre, which may sound like a lot, but right now your density is 8.7, depending on how you look at it on R3. So it actually lowers the density in R1 under what you're seeing before you, raises the density possible in R2, and lowers the density in R3. Now, those are just words. If you look just beyond the ordinance itself, there's a little table we put together to kind of give you an example of the differences. And, you know, we see 10 and 25 acre, that's probably more in line than 100 acres. So on the left side of this table, you'll see the current zoning ordinance, how many units would be allowed on that acre tract that came in. So you have a 10-acre R1, you could squeeze 19.8 units in its lots at 22,000 square feet. Under the proposed amendment, that would shrink to 10, 1 unit per acre. So you can see the difference off to the side of what it's done to the density. Under R2, currently it's 25.6 for a 10-acre tract. It would go up to 30 because it's, again, 3 units per acre, so 3 times 10 gets you to 30. You know what you're seeing when it comes in. For R3, it is a pretty significant difference, but for 10 acres, you could, in theory, fit 86 units. That would shrink to 50. Again, the 1, 3, and 5, those are placeholders. They're just suggestions. This body has full discretion on how they want to handle those. But that shrinks the density in R3. And again, back to PUD gives you flexibility. If someone comes with a PUD, they're allowed to play with density, they're allowed to play a little bit more with open space. This is if you don't seek a PUD. So, looking at this, the one other caveat I will give, the way you currently have it, you're looking at lot size, which means the roads and other things, sidewalks that go in, the unit standards here, like the 19.8 units in a 10-acre R1 right now, it's really going to be lower. You're not going to fit 19 units on 10 acres under R1 because the roads and everything take up space. So when you're looking at that, that's the absolute maximum. You probably, in reality, be a little bit lower. Under the new standard, you look at the acreage. You know that's the maximum amount. So what else is there to this ordinance? Well, there is no lot size per se. There are lot setback minimums, those are what are called in here bulk lot standards. It sets the front, the size, the side, and the rear setbacks, and the minimum lot width. You would be able to probably have slightly smaller lot sizes in each of these zoning districts than you would right now. So it allows for that open space to be in there. So if you had a 100-acre tract come in under R1, you put 100 units on there and you'd be able to fit those because you have 30% of the space dedicated to open space. So again, these are all words. The very last page of this packet is one I got to work on recently. It's not finalized, and you kind of can look through the topographical lines. But that is a 150-acre tract of land that has approximately 150 lots. under what was there R1. And you can see two very large, about a 9-acre and almost 7.5-acre open space. It kind of does a figure 8 in the subdivision. You've got a 5-acre detention area that would just be undeveloped, and then 55 acres in the south that's just going to be forest. I think the government's going to use some for a sewer drip field, but currently what you would see with a development this size is probably 150 or more 1-acre lots, just a sea of lots. A lot of communities have that standard. Looking through this lens, again, you're looking at how many units are we allowed per acre, and oh, by the way, a certain percentage, 30% in this case of what's proposed, is going to be undeveloped. And here's how it's going to be undeveloped. Some of it's going to be formal gathering spaces for the community. Most of it, 75% of it's just grassland, trees, what have you. So it's a pretty radical shift in how you've been looking at it. It does change the overall density of all three. Again, lowers R1, raises R2, significantly lowers R3. But given feedback from this body, discussions over the years, the comp plan, the woodland protection, all these things are kind of coming together, and this is perhaps a good next step to help preserve some of the look of the town while allowing for development. One thing I've seen from developers in other jurisdictions that have these types of regulations, they somewhat like it, I mean, in that their infrastructure costs are going to be lower. You don't have to have roads everywhere and pipes everywhere. They get to shrink the size of the development, get the same number of lots, because they're preserving part of the land. So I think there's very good pros and cons to it all. I recommend it. I worked with Amanda and Jeff on it. I think they recommend it. The Planning Commission recommended it, but it's a zoning ordinance. If y'all are going to have any changes to it procedurally, I would ask that you make them Tuesday with a motion, because we would need to take it back, because I imagine it'd be substantive. We need to take it back to Planning Commission, and then it would come to you for second reading, because they would need to act on any substantive changes. So that's my spiel. I'll let Amanda or Jeff or anybody else kind of jump in.
Are y'all ready? Okay, so some of the discussions with developers, you know, the first part of it, as far as me, which I'm probably the hardest sell on this, I'm assuming I'm good with, because from what I've seen, you know, if they do a development and they do a open area per se or a playground per se, they are a laughable attempt. Some of these subdivisions I went through that have been built here, technically there is no open space. I don't care what they call it, it's not there. And the reason it's not there is because they don't want to give up even one lot to provide a playground, a park, a few benches, that they just don't want to. So, you know, I'm not necessarily opposed to that, because, you know, this needs to happen, some sort. I mean, if you're going to build a 25-acre development or even a 10-acre development, you know, I do believe there needs to be some sort of open space. Where's all those kids going to go? They're going to go to the street. And so it's just necessary. As we go into the second fold of this, like, I'll agree with you guys on say a 10-acre or better development, because what that allows me to do in an R3 is take what was actually unusable property anyway, gullies, hillsides, that kind of thing. I can turn those into open space. I can scrunch all my R3 over to the side that's flat. And I get what you're saying. You know, you're going to save on your development costs, because you're going to let me utilize more of the flat land, and then I can use this other stuff that I didn't really want to use anyway for open space. Even if I lose a few lots, the cost of developing those lots in those areas would have been extreme. Where this hurts, I think, is somebody smaller that's got a 2-acre R3 development, because now instead of 16 homes or townhomes, you're going to take them down the way this is written, so like, I think the number's 10. So you're going to lose 6 usable lots in an area that really doesn't benefit you to squeeze them together, because you've only got 2 acres. Your development costs aren't going to be any cheaper to do it on 1 acre than it will be on 2. So to me, and you tell me the negatives of this, to me, I would like to see this limited to a certain size tract, because if you've got a 1-acre R3 tract, I think this kills your value of the lot.
So these are the density standards for all zoning. So I don't think we could bracket it, we'd have to get into it. But again, that 5, I mean, it was simple math of 1, 3, and 5. Right now, the town's nearly at 9.
All right, so let me ask you this, like, you know, that's gonna be the thing, like, and I'm willing to give a little bit, but if it's gonna sweep and catch all size lots, you know, I'm gonna want closer to that 8 number if I'm gonna support this, because, you know, you'll take a 2-acre R3 tract, and you're gonna half the value of that tract, because I can only build 5 instead of 8 on a 1-acre tract. I mean, you're looking at probably $60,000 to $70,000 per lot that I'm gonna lose right off the rip, which makes the value of that property go down, which I don't want to see happen. You know, a lot of people complain our values are very high, but I think that should be a goal. I don't think you should want your property values to tank. So, you know.
Again, I mean, I'll let Amanda weigh in on this, but if you don't like what the base is, you could always seek a PUD. It's unusual to seek a PUD on a really small lot, because you're allowed to deviate from
I thought about that.
density.
PUD is so much more on an acre tract, so much more restrictive and costly for. We're gonna avoid as developers those 1-acre R3 tracts, because we don't want to go PUD because of all the headache for a 1 acre. But I don't want to, you know, I mean, you know, I just feel like if you've got an acre R3 tract that's worth 100, now you've dropped it to 60 because I've lost, you know, 25% of my houses. So from my end of it, you know, if we, and I'm going to ask this with all due respect, if we can't come to an agreement on a higher number, should we separate these two to where it's not I kill it all or I kill half? You know what I'm saying? Like, does this have to go as one? Because the first part is great. I'm with that. The second part, if we can't get that number close to where I feel it needs to be as far as my vote, I don't know that I can back it.
I'll think on that.
Okay.
Really, I mean, not that I'm trying to help developers here, but I think without being able to have smaller lots and looking at the unit count per acre, I think the first one alone creates its own burden.
So you're talking about the first part of the, well.
But it only applies to 10 acres.
See, that's my issue.
So there's a gap down there where it's not applying, so I get that.
Right. And there's where my concern is the under 15 units, you know, because I'll give you an example of, you know, an acre R3, you know, I'm probably not going to do 8 because you're going to have issues, roads and things, but still, if, you know, if I could do 6, for an example, you know, on that R3, then this doesn't hurt me with the open space. You probably don't need open space on an acre anyway. But when you get over into here, you know, I think, and like I say, you know, that would be my question to you guys is what number do you think still would do what you're trying to do? And, you know, because if I just say, okay, I want it to be 8, then I've almost made it worse because now you can slam 8 into a half of what you used to because you know what I'm saying? Like it's 8 per acre now, so you slam them all over here. I don't want to do that. And that's, I guess, what I'm asking is maybe y'all kind of think about that number as far as your opinions and see where we could go to that you feel is acceptable.
Well, and this came up in our meeting, and y'all jump in whenever, but we wanted to make R2 a little bit more different than R1, right? And
right.
I think we're doing that with this.
I'm okay with R2, I think, and even R1 if you lose the half acre.
But the point is, you have to look at where the town zoning is now. And, you know, I'm not going to speak for this council, I represent this council. But R3 is a hard sell for this council right now.
It is.
And part of this was, well, if the density is less, with that, and you know exactly what's coming in, does that make R3 more palatable?
Well, and I'm going to tell you something that was said to me, and I won't tell you about who, but, and this is one of the things that I think we need to be careful with, and I don't know the answer, but I know the problem. So I'm going to come to you and I'm going to say, okay, I got this 5-acre tract and I want R3. Council doesn't love R3, so we're like, no, we're not going to give you R3. Okay, fine, I'll take R2. Okay, we'll give you R2. Now I'm going to do HBRs. So I got as many houses as I have with R3, I just did it through a different window.
Well, that's why we changed the definition of dwelling unit. So whatever individual dwelling unit is, if it's a duplex, that's 2. If it's a 8-unit apartment, that's 8.
Gotcha.
So you come in on a 5-acre tract under R2, that's 15. Break it up however you want.
Gotcha. Because that was the thing, like I think, you know, and that was beginning to be the you know, and don't get me wrong, like, I'm a developer too, however, like, you have to have some sort of conscience, you know, and so if you're like, well, the city doesn't want R3, but I'm gonna do R2 and HBR, and then now I've just got R3,
No, this defeats that workaround,
Gotcha.
because we've seen that before too.
Yeah.
It's how many dwelling units do you have? A house is 1, a duplex is 2, a triplex is 3, and beyond a duplex is only permitted in R3.
True,
So,
yeah.
you know, you're only looking at single-family home or a duplex in R2.
And you know, and I'm not, because I've got a tract right now I'm thinking of, it's not, I don't know how big it is, but it's not an acre, but it's R3. You know, so let's just say it's for a good argument, it's half acre, so I could do 4. If we do this, I could do,
If it's a half acre, you could do 2 or 3.
right now,
No, sorry,
oh,
under the new.
So-
Yes, under currently, you're right, yes.
so if we did this, I'd be like 2.5, if we kept it at 5.
Yeah.
You know, and just doing the math, I just, for me, I think that number needs to be a little higher than 5. Maybe not 8, maybe not 7, but maybe 6. If, you know, I mean, I want to be reasonable because I do think, I understand why we're trying to do this, I really do.
The number was less concerning for us. We wanted to change the way you look at it. Whatever the number is, the will of this body.
Okay.
I think R1 being 1 unit per acre is very standard, and that should be your base. R2, 3 is a suggestion. If y'all want to change that to 2 or 4, go for it. R3 is going to be the hardest, right? Because we're nearly at 9 right now, probably closer to 8 when you factor in roads and all of that for minimum lot size. But 8,000 square feet for the first lot and 5,000 for the lot thereafter is already pretty small.
Well, and if you look at, and that's the thing I like to do, ride around, look at developments. If you go, and I'm going to pick on this guy because I don't think this is a very good idea, but if you go out there and you turn to go to landfill, and I'm assuming that's probably an R3, and they're stacked in there like, you know, just, and it's not a good development. It's just not. And so, and I don't want to see that here.
Are those individual homes?
They are.
Yeah.
But they're just very, very tight. I mean, just absolutely, you know. And I don't want to see that happen. I mean, so I'm not necessarily opposed to it, even though it may hurt me at some point down the road.
I recognize that, and we talked about this in the meeting, if you have a 30 or 40 acre tract coming in asking for R3 zoning, that's a big ask. Even at this, 5 times 30 is 150. That's 150 units on 30 acres. That's a lot to ask for, right? Versus right now, it's even higher, actually. So you would at least have more open space and everything under the 5. If you went 6, you'd be looking at 180 on an R3. So it's if you go that higher density on larger developments, it sounds scarier, right?
It does, yeah.
When you're dealing with 1 acre developments, it's almost like, are we giving up too much?
And I agree with you as far as if you had a 40 acre tract, I wouldn't even begin to try R3. You're never going to get it. I mean, because it's just too dangerous. It's too...
Well, you would probably want to do a PUD.
You would.
Because it would allow for the type of back and forth you see at the planning commission and this body to say, hey, change the type of fence, add a turn lane here.
Mhm.
That doesn't happen in the non-PUD process. So we're just looking at minimum standards, assuming developers will do the minimum and put the maximum there, right? So you're setting that cap on the maximum with this, and, you know, I get it that maybe 6, 7, 8 is better for smaller, but it's all rezoning. If you go higher density, again, I'm not trying to preempt anything. If you go higher density, it hurts the likelihood, maybe it's a good thing, that this body would approve R3 for big things that are not PUD.
Well, and I think, you know, even with my hat that I wear, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, because big R3 developments scare me, because you've got so much open road that you can, you know, and people just aren't good stewards of the property. They're just not. And so, you know, and I don't think, and for that reason, I don't think we need to go to 7 or 8. I just would like to see just a little higher, just for the small developer, you know, that's wanting to do an acre or 2.
Well, I can certainly put together a table that does 6 instead of 5, so y'all can look at it for Tuesday. But that'll just be, so it's presented as is from the PC. You or somebody would need to make a motion on Tuesday to amend it to 6.
Gotcha.
See what happens, and if that is amended, we'll take it to PC so they can weigh in on it and give you a recommendation on it.
Well, and I know this is like, you know, just circumstance, but when you look at maybe separating these two, just in case that they don't want to go back to the six, because I want to get as much through as I can, but I got to realize what the repercussions of that are.
Well, to be perfectly clear, y'all can pass the first part by itself. You absolutely can. I don't think I would recommend that with how open space and this new density kind of goes in harmony. I think it'll throw it out, out of balance, but if that's what y'all want, it's the will of this body, and we'll make it work. So I would be more inclined to recommend changing numbers or language than to strip out an entire section.
So let me put y'all on and you two, let's put y'all on the spot. Do y'all think going to six, if the body wants to do that, would hurt what you are trying to do with this?
All I can speak to is our intention was, the 1, 3, and 5, we intended to be placeholders for you all to work through that.
Gotcha.
Yeah, again, we're changing the way you look at it. You could say it's 50. I mean, that's absurd, but it's a number of density. There's no golden rule. We've seen, there are some jurisdictions that have like R1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and traditionally, that meant units per acre. So R1 is 1, R2 is 2, R3 is 3. But people got away from that. And so usually they have 3 or 4 residential zonings, and everybody's a little different. I mean, I've got a jurisdiction around here that's, their R2 is 1.5. Which is not that different than R1 was, but it's a little bit more. But that's actually closer to what we have right now, going from 22,000 to 17,000 for a lot. That's
Not much different.
And
That's
I like
actually closer than that.
R2 is a safe zoning in most, because you can't get into quadplexes and all that crap.
Right.
And
The most you can do is a duplex.
Yeah.
And, I think we talked an example of a 20-acre lot going R2 under this, that's 60 units. You could do 30 duplexes. You could do 60 single-family homes. You could do a smattering, half and half. It does allow a little bit more options, and so all that matters is you're capping the density for however many acres they're bringing in. That's the look, and I would like to see the town go to that. That's a recommendation. It's up to y'all to decide to do it, but the debate's going to be the density number, right? And the only one I feel strongly about is R1 being 1 unit per acre. Everything else, R2, R3, pick a number you feel is appropriate, knowing that when the rezoning comes before you, you're going to see that's 26 acres. I know exactly what that means if you're asking for R2, and I know exactly what that means if you're asking for R3, because I just multiply that number by whatever the density number is. And you play it out from there. Now, a lot of them aren't going to be able to get the maximum because if there's so much area that's unbuildable, because you still have to have lots. You don't get out of having lots. It's just we're off of setbacks, and you manipulate your building envelope. You can't make it too small or you can't build anything.
Right.
So your lot's going to have some size. The lot size actually didn't reduce that much. It reduced some, but it's not this massive deviation. It just tried to shrink it. I think the math was about 25-30% because 30% of the land's going to be open space, so it's trying to be proportional.
Which is probably a fair trade to get the, especially, I recommend anybody, go to Leadville, just drive down that road, that's all you got to do. And
I know exactly where you're talking
that's
about.
an R3 that's just out of control.
Even?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the city of Dixon regrets it, but it's too late, it's already there. I don't think that'll ever happen again in the city of Dixon.
Well, they got burned by that.
So, and I don't want to see that happen to us, because it's just not, not a good thing.
Like the Dairy Queen parking lot.
The parking lot?
Oh, that was the parking lot.
Yeah, there is, so remember, once you get to a certain size, there is an open space requirement for commercial. I know 3% doesn't sound like much, but that means once you have something that has a couple buildings, they have to put like a playground or some gazebo or something to add to it. So it's not a ridiculous requirement, but it's something. It's just not a sea of strictness. I'm going to try to break it up.
I don't build. I don't develop. but I do ride around and I see things. And I made a speech to Amanda and Jeff about how I would like to see a development come together. I like the mature, family-looking development. I like mature, that's why I like the tree thing that we're bringing up. If I was going to buy or rent, I would want to ride into it, even if it's a new development. It's not all concrete, you know. It's got some trees, it's got some variation of a shape to it. That's what I like. But I don't develop and I don't build, so I don't know. I don't know if you can build to my wishes and desires, Brian.
Well, I can try.
Okay, you help me design how the driveways to go.
You pay for it.
Hey, you would, if you like that kind of living,
Yeah.
and you wanted to go in and it was like already a ready-made community, and it had, the lawns were pretty, I see this in other places, you know, and nice trees already, and landscaping, and then there are places that the kids can go and they can ride their bikes on the sidewalks, and that's the kind of communities I like. So I don't know, that's just my opinion on this. I have no idea on the percentages and how many units you need, and I don't know the setbacks, and I don't know, but that is what I like. I think that would be very nice for our town, to have some developments like that. And I think it could happen. Okay, any more comments, questions? Connie, you got anything? I know you've been over there taking notes.
Well, yeah, but on other stuff. Names that I wanted to remember.
Okay. Okay, so we kind of know then maybe where we're going to go with this Tuesday night?
Again, if there's going to be a change, please make it on Tuesday. Don't wait till second reading so we can take it to PC.
Moving on down to item number 7, an ordinance to adopt an updated rural fire service program for the town of White Bluff, Tennessee. I'm assuming you and Eric maybe talked about that, and where did you?
No, ma'am, Councilman Kincaid brought this up last month and wanted this added to the agenda. He wanted to talk about a possible fee cap.
Fee cap.
And so all this is our current ordinance as it relates to the rural fire service. This is just to give y'all something to talk for.
Yeah, I understand that several residences, but they are very nice, I understand.
Yeah.
Very, very nice, very large residences. 2 or 3 of them came in and paid $1,000. Is that correct?
Yeah. But they had a very nice, because we're going by assessment now.
Yeah,
Assessment
okay.
is what one assessment was like over $1 million.
So that is in like section 3, that where it talks about subscription charges. That tells you how we currently calculate rural fire service fee. I assume that may be where you would make a change if you chose to.
Yeah, the minimum's 150, 0.1% of the tax appraised value. If it's commercial, that store or sell hazardous waste, explosive materials, petroleum, it's 0.2. Those are your 2 standards right now.
And there's no limit. I mean,
There's no cap.
yeah. So that's what he was talking about.
That's what he was talking about, okay.
The only problem I have with a cap is what our fire department is having to, they're not capped in what they're having to do. So they've got this huge residence that they're having to take care of.
That's my concern as well, is what's
Yeah.
our cost for trying to put a fire that size out? I mean, $1,000, I don't think is even gonna cover it, I really don't. If it's a massive fire, I don't know that, and I'm gonna say this, and a lot of people's not gonna like this, but if you're not in the city, this is not, I mean, to me, I don't think it should be for profit, but I certainly don't think we need to lose money by fighting fires outside of what our city is. So
This is an option that they don't have to
That's
take.
kind of what I'm
Just-
saying.
Yeah,
And in all honesty, I mean, if you've got $1 million home, you can afford $1,000 a year. I mean, that's just, it is what it is. I mean, I know that's kind of straightforward, but it's factual. I mean, so, I don't know, I know Councilman Cade is in favor. I don't know that I am without some argument of, you know, what the benefit of us do. I don't know that it benefits us. I mean, because you got to consider too, I mean, that's you know, it's not only the cost, but the danger to our people out there fighting in this humongous structure. I mean, I think it's worth something. So
Eric has not had any input in this as far as.
Well, he did say, when we talked about this, that he doesn't agree with the cap. Because of what I said, that they're not capped on what they have to do.
right.
Chief Bolger, do you have input on this?
Well, sir, I'm pleased,
Not fired, no.
We'll get Eric next. I you know, and that's another thing. You know, if he is opposed, I don't really know that I can go for that.
Okay.
It's only here because it was asked to be done.
Correct. Yes.
Moving on down to item 8, discuss offer of irrevocable dedication accepting Sadal Cobb Way in the Maple Hill section of Greenfield Ridge subdivision and accept maintenance bond of $10,368.
Mayor, this is Maple Hills in Greenfield Ridge. Started out as Eagle's Nest, if that helps anyone. They have completed that development. They put the top coat on the road. They're now asking us to accept that road. And then they have to do the required 1-year maintenance bond.
What did they have to chew up the sidewalk for? They had to make a modification somewhere, I saw them cut the sidewalk up.
I don't know specifically, but I do know that we went through there and any cracks or gouges out of the sidewalk, that was fixed as well before we would bring this to you.
So you've seen how the sidewalk is laid out?
Yeah, I know on one end, the two ends are different. Now, why that happened, I don't know.
Where they put the sidewalk on the inside of the curb
Yep.
for a certain distance, and then back on the outside when you got to where the actual dwellings are.
Yeah, I don't remember the specific situation that caused that.
You think the puddling issue is correct now that they put the top coat on?
So, you know, we've had some pretty heavy rains here past couple of weeks, and a few of those, we actually went out and kind of watched. It's not perfect, but it's not just standing like it did originally.
Talk about that, any biting in?
Yes.
That's what I kept telling my wife, that once they put the extra hot coat on it, then it would drain into the drains that were already there, but because the original, I guess it's called a blue top, was below the surface of the drain, that's why I was puddling.
Right.
My question is, can we change the name?
I don't think that's feasible when it's a post office address already and a 911 address already.
If you do that, you have to pay, or you yourself have to work with all of the mortgage companies to update all of the deeds of trust on the properties. That can happen, it's just, there's a cost to it. It's been tried elsewhere, and that usually was the pushback, because it's usually at the time when it's coming in, but, I mean, it's been named.
All right. I think everybody in Greenfield Ridge thinks it's a middle finger to everybody there.
What's wrong with the name? I mean, I'm just, I don't know. Sadal Cobb, it's a hard thing for me to say, but otherwise, what's the difference in that and Hayes Hill Road? I mean, I'm asking.
Personally, I'd rather have that.
But rather have the hay still
Because
up?
I'm just, this is what I have been told, and I tend to agree. It's the person, people that it's named after.
Oh, that, okay, okay. Okay.
And the other one on across the street, Lala,
Lala Dean Lee.
yeah, is that a person?
I don't know.
But it's still better if you don't know.
Okay. So, but anyway, we are ready, to accept the road with that maintenance bond. Unless you want to say it. Okay, I've got one thing here, this came up actually after we put the agenda together. Some of you come to our planning commissions, and, we have a gentleman that sits at the very end beside me, Mr. Bernie Potts. He was the fire chief here for years. And, then he came on the planning commission at a time when we really needed people. And he came on, he had served us very well for several years in that. And Bernie's had a stroke 2 weeks ago. So, I've been meeting with them. They're personal friends of mine anyway. And, I went and talked to him today, and he's resigning. So I am appointing Elizabeth Littleton to the planning board. I asked her for a brief resume, but I'll tell you what I know about her. She lives on Old Charlotte Road. She has lived in White Bluff for probably 8 to 10 years. She has 2 degrees. She has taught in schools, and she's been coordinator to help students make the transition to jobs. She is in real estate now. She knows the importance, we talked about this, she knows the importance of zoning and codes and the processes you have to go through it. She knows about development. She is real estate. And her mom, well, in fact, that's why she's not here. I'm sure her mom is in the primaries today. Her mother is Mary Littleton, so she is very well versed in government procedures, so nothing will be a shock to her. So Elizabeth is excited about being on our planning and codes board. Her resume, a little bit more than I was going to talk about. She is the realtor with Reliant Realty. She got an established relationship, got clients, just a regular real estate resume, I would say. She stays educated on market trends, zoning restrictions, and local planning. She's also an office manager of Littleton Trucking. She went to Frequent, she was a job specialist, jobs for Tennessee graduates at Frequent High School. Her education is she got a certificate for professional occupational education at TSU in 2012, Bachelor of Psychology from Austin Peay State University in 2006. So Elizabeth will be starting immediately on the planning board. She knows the scheduled dates. She already got it all written in. So she will be with us. I don't know if you guys know her or not. I didn't know if you were.
I know the name, but I haven't.
Yeah, right. Okay. So I just wanted to I wish she could have been here tonight. So y'all could have met her personally. But like I said, her mother is in the primary. I think she was running, I think, against Justin Spurlock or somebody like that. And anyway, so of course the whole, well, it's just closed actually. So she'll be with her mother, I'm sure. But I wanted to announce it.
And we wish Mr. Potts well.
He was almost in tears today, he and his wife both. He loves this, he really does. He said, I'm at the point now that I can't even, he's lost the use of his legs, and, you know, and he said, in my short-term memory, he said, it's coming back. I mean, they're working with him, of course, therapy, but he loves the town of White Bluff. He's given many, many years to it, so, yeah, I've thanked him immensely, and we'll do something for him.
So I'm curious,
Uh-huh.
and I'm not questioning you,
Mhm.
I'm just curious as to, the last two people you've appointed have been realtors.
Realtors. The realtor's a realtor.
Well, the person that you had to fill last year was also a realtor, right?
You talking about Debbie?
You're talking about planning? or what?
Debbie Brewer, I guess, is who he's talking.
Well, she's a real estate license, like I had one time, but she knows, I mean, I like planning on that, you know, yeah. But Debbie was like, she lives in Plymouth. It was, a good choice for me at that time, and I think she's done a really good job. You don't have to be a realtor, though. That's not one of the specifications, not one of the qualifications. There are no qualifications. There's no qualifications for this. It's, honestly, it's kind of an objective selection.
I'd love to attend the planning and zoning commission meetings. I have to remember during that time period.
Are they on YouTube now?
Yeah, I'll be good.
They're on YouTube?
And I did think about that while we're on that subject, you know, I want that to be moved, you know, but what if they can
Right.
come to either meeting? So Friday, one night, the people that have not get in, one, and I know Hazel too.
Planning, to me, is more of a business meeting. It's more of, most planning decisions go to council anyway, but it's more of the people that are in planning and developing. They're people in businesses, and it's easier for them to be here during the day and go ahead and take care, because it's really and truly mostly a business position. It's like, what can we do, where we, here are our drawings, have we met the restrictions, you know, it's really more that type of meeting, whereas council, you cover the whole gamut. Things that really would affect, I think, the average citizen vote. There's nothing in the world wrong with wanting to know what's going on with planning, nothing. But now we do have it. And the people that are up here on planning are not elected. And it's not like, well, I don't like what they're doing, so I'm not gonna vote for them. They're not elected. So, that's just my take on it. Okay, anybody else got anything? Okay.
I'm gonna put Chief Holcher on the spot.
Yes.
What's your code for not parking on the street?
No.
I know which deputy we can give that to.
But,
I would like to see no parking at all. You know, it's a traffic hazard. Our roads, most of them are not very wide as it is, so it's real easy to be taking over more space than what's needed. I mean, I would like to see it, if possible, where no parking on the road at all.
And that's residential or business?
My opinion, yes, sir.
That's why I asked you, because you deal with it most of the time.
Yes, sir. You know, I mean, we do have quite a few that park on the road. You know, some of the streets get really dangerous. You know, Jordan Circle is one of them. It's very narrow.
Right.
Parking is just awful.
Where on the other hand, you have Main Street down here, which is very wide, and there's a house there that has no place to park. Which I don't see how that happens, but.
because used to, the people that lived in those type houses, there was a lot of those little houses all down that main street there. People didn't have cars. It was a pedestrian town. They didn't even have, it didn't matter if you had a parking space. Nobody had a car. People got out and walked to school, walked to the stores. It was pedestrian town. Because I asked that same question one time to a planner. I said, when this was laid out, our town was laid out, the streets were narrow. There were a lot of alleys, you know. And he answered, he said, well, Mayor, he said, the people that laid out the town, and when I think how many years ago that happened, they did a pretty darn good job. The people that laid out the town laid it out for pedestrian. It was just a small area. You had maybe 400 or 500 people that lived in it. They got out and walked. You know, they didn't have cars. Now it's grown, of course, over the years, and a couple of those houses, I know the one you're talking about, because we've looked at purchasing that before, and every time I would stop it, but there's no way that you can get a driveway in there, you know, because, you know, there's not even enough room.
Yeah.
So that particular place, you have to park on the street. And I think that's dangerous. I wouldn't want to park my car on the street now.
Well, I mean, in that particular instance, I would be willing to grant a variance.
Yeah.
But,
That location is definitely wide enough that it could be marked,
As
and
a
the
parking
parking
spot.
place
Right,
is actually
right.
striped out.
Yeah.
Jeff and I have already talked about that, because of the Buffalo, that area, it's pretty dangerous parking next to where they are, so.
Mayor, if I may, does the safety action plan address this?
Yes, yes. It encourages parallel stripe parking.
Yeah, so I'll just add this as a 2 cents, and y'all can decide if you want it on the agenda Tuesday. It'd be happy for discussion, but in most of the jurisdictions I've assisted with this, if you're going to do no parking on streets, you really got to mark it, you know, curbs, having the parking signs, you know, actually stripe parking. Discuss your time with people, and where's the list, right? You go erect signs and signage, or you have to, from time to time, basically create a map of the town and say, here's where I don't want parking on the street, go out and execute that. So just something to chew on how you want. It's not so much the enforcement, because we have the force, you know, you drive by and see parking on the street, you're going to call that there's parking on the street where it's not supposed to be, they can issue a ticket. It's what notice are we going to provide in terms of on the street saying, don't park here. So.
I think it was 25 or 30 years ago, Scott, actually, that we had to stop people from parking on the sidewalk. They were parking on the sidewalk, because we have old grocery stores and things there. You just park on the sidewalk and go and get your groceries. And boy, when, I think that was my first year on the council, so I believe it was.
I remember doing that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Walk around the sidewalk.
Get out and walk, yeah. And I remember the first time, Danny Williams, I think, was the one that brought it up. And when he brought up no parking on the sidewalks, woo, those merchants in town, I was afraid they were going to have crosses in our yard. But then that passed, and, you know, it goes on, and you just know you don't park on the sidewalks. Well, you know, it used to really be a whole lot different than it is now.
I hate to be that guy that proposes this, but, you know, sometimes it's getting out of hand because they're like Greenfield Ridge, it's in the deed restriction, but who reads that? And who enforces that? So it's strictly a...
So from an HOA perspective, you would actually only be able to fine the lot owner who either owns the car or it's their guest. Now, again, good luck trying to figure that part out, but yeah.
It's like no fences in the front yard, and yet it's in the deed restrictions, but yet in Greenfield Ridge, there's a couple houses that have fences in the front yard.
And the town has no authority over
Right.
the CC&Rs. It's someone in the subdivision would have to sue.
It's particularly a civil thing.
So as a town though, and I agree, I mean, there's places, Park Street being one of them.
Like your neighbor.
Yes, so, I mean, but, and it's not all the time, okay, but it would be a huge expense for the town to even think about doing it. If we have to, you have to put up signage everywhere, and you have to paint the curves or whatever with.
Well, there's a lot of options, and if the council wants it, we can put together some of those options. I'm just saying, what is a residential street? Is it just within subdivisions? Because you're not in a subdivision. He is. So, I mean, you'd be picking White Bluff Hills, Bell Forge, Greenfield Ridge, and a handful of others that say no parking on those streets. And then you'd have to go out and actually hit other areas if you wanted. So, I don't know. How y'all wanted to enact that, I think, is something to chew on, because there's a lot of different ways.
Well, that's why I was asking Chief Holstrom, because he's the one who would have to, take care of that, and respect him, if he says it's a dangerous issue, I think it is, When her neighbor has a special event, I mean, there's cars taking up a full lane.
Well, there's a difference between parking on the street and blocking two-way traffic, because you can't block two-way traffic right now. That's in the rules of the road. So,
I hate to be that guy, it is what it is.
well, if y'all want, we can.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask. Do we want him to pursue this? Do we want legal to pursue this, or are y'all interested? I mean, everything we ask him to do, you gotta remember, it costs us $3,000. Okay, but anyway, so I just wanna make sure this is something, do we want it or do we not?
He does
at
a
this
great
point?
job, so.
He does a great job, yeah.
I would like to know what my options are.
Okay, so we just put it on for discussion. I'm not gonna draft anything, we can just look at a couple of options and bring to y'all, and y'all can chew on how you might want to do it, and Chief Bolger can think about what he might want to see to help him enforce it. We don't wanna make it hard on police to be able to write tickets.
Right.
And have all the people who get tickets get out of them. We wanna make it so that they work, right? So.
Right. And that's what I would appreciate.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else we need to look at or talk about, Tuesday night? Okay. Since we're not making motions, go ahead.